Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Criminal, Sacrificio, out September 17th on Metal Blade Records. This album has 12 tracks, 42 minutes in length, and this is the band's 9th full-length studio album. They are a Chilean thrash death metal band. This album has a very simple style approach to it as far as the structure goes. At least that's my perception when I listen to this record. It's an album that feels very linear, that it has a very easy to understand path from the first to the last song. That doesn't mean that every single song sounds the same or feels the same. There are some deviations throughout the album, but your perception of the record when you reach the end of the album is that the record stayed together, it stayed balanced, and it stayed cohesive, and it stayed as a unit. That is the overall design of this structure, a structure that really has a soft impact on your listening experience because it doesn't really force you to do something that you don't want to do. You just got to sit back and listen to it and let the record do all the work and guide you in the experience of taking you from the first all the way to the last song. Once you get into the soundscape, the record offers the perfect combination of death metal and thrash metal. And I think that perfect combination of those two genres come together with a very raw-natured sound. That is really the DNA of this album. I mean, we can talk about how thick it is, how much volume it has, how aggressive it is, how much intensity it carries, how much it pushes forward. It always feels like it's in your face at every single turn. All of those things are true, and they're all part of the overall soundscape of this record and the atmosphere that it creates song in and song out. But I think the motor that drives that experience, or the motor that makes the album feel that way, that makes it feel that thick, is the raw component of the sound itself. When you look at this record, there's not one single element on this album that has a clear defined structure or a clear defined parameters in which they should operate, and that controls a little bit the edges around the soundscape of the guitars, drums, bass, or even the sound of the vocals. So everything is moving forward, everything is moving in the same direction, but they're not necessarily all moving in different lanes. Sometimes they intercept each other, so they muddy the waters a little bit, and that's where that raw sound really comes across. So it feels almost like a live record without an audience coming into the studio. It has that punch, it has that drive. Now the drums on this album sound powerful, but I felt like they could have helped the album even more if they had a little bit more definition. I wanted them to have a little bit more oomph, to ground this album a little bit more, and not just be the motor that catapults each track forward. And I think if they had done that, the overall sensation of this album in terms of the aggression and intensity would still be there, would still be a raw sounding record, but a better defined raw sounding album. So I think that's perhaps the key element that needed a little bit more guidance in terms of how you're going to put it together in the overall concept of the soundscape that this album has. Because the guitars, they're thick, they're groovy at times, they're chunky, they have power, they push the songs, they drive the experience, they really dictate where you're going to go. But if they had something behind them that offer a little bit more stability, I think they could sound even better, they could feel even bigger, and not really lose any of the current attributes that they have. The bass, the same could be said about it, because I felt that sometimes it came into the forefront, and sometimes it felt like it was almost not even there. I wanted the bass to have a more clear-cut role in terms of what can do to the soundscape. I really felt like it could help the drums have that better definition of experience as well. And sometimes when you hear the bass on this record, it almost feels like it's coming out of left field. It doesn't feel like it's integrated well with everything else that is happening. So it's either feels that it's not there, or it feels like it's there but it doesn't belong there. So there's a problem in how you're integrating the bass in the overall soundscape that's really giving this sense of being outside the box when it needs to be inside the box and becoming part of the overall experience. It doesn't have necessarily a negative impact on how you perceive this album because there's so much intensity, there's so much aggression, the album is so raw that all of these elements kind of get lost within the overall sound that the album puts forward. The vocals are super consistent in terms of how they come across. The raw sound is also represented with the vocals in terms of how raw they feel. And I love the aggression that they have, and I love the power that they have, and I love how much they match the intensity of the songs. I really enjoyed the songs in Spanish. I felt like they were a little bit more organic, they felt a little bit more natural to me, and the intensity that you're getting out of the vocals came in a little bit better across. They just felt real, they just felt a little bit more integrated into the overall structure of the song, better integrated into the overall mood of the lyrics, but overall I really enjoyed the vocals from beginning to end because I felt like they were the perfect outlet for everything that was happening within this record, either be in the sound or the lyrics themselves. In conclusion, this is a very interesting album, an album that has a lot to offer to the listener, an album that has a lot of power, a lot of aggression, that doesn't have any pauses. When you press play at the beginning, the intensity that you're going to get on the first track is pretty much the intensity that you're going to get throughout. So it's a record that feels robust, that comes at you, that has all of these pieces that create a substantial amount of volume, one that really puts you down and really breaks you up. It just has a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of animosity built into this album, and it's really well represented from beginning to end in terms of how it comes at you, and it's in your face, relentless from top all the way to the bottom. I already mentioned some of the things that I would like to see different. I think they would have made the overall experience better, but I don't think they necessarily would have changed the dynamic of the record, and they wouldn't also change the intensity that the album has. They would just make things feel a little bit better defined, a little bit clearer for the listener when you're going through the album. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Caged. The drum salvo as the song opens is just outstanding. I just love the drums on this track. I love that salvo right at the beginning. Then the guitars come in and they bring a lot of grittiness to it. The vocals add intensity on top of those guitars, and then you feel like this is a substantial track that has a lot to offer, that has a lot of meat on the bone. The backing vocals in the chorus work really well because they make that specific part of the song feel a little bit bigger, a little bit more powerful without having to change necessarily the vocal approach completely. So really interesting. You add volume, you add intensity, you add aggression, but you're not really changing the DNA of the track, or for that matter, the DNA of the band. The solo is phenomenal on this track, has a little bit of an old school thrash metal vibe to it. It really completes the song well. Next we have Sistema Criminal. It's a Spanish song, and I really enjoyed the Spanish tracks on this album, this one specifically, because I felt like it was a little bit more organic. It hit a little bit closer to home, and you're able to deliver that song with more meaning, with more intensity, with more emotion. It opens up with a solo, which is something that I really enjoy, has that old school approach, and immediately you feel like this is a track that's going to have a lot of things to offer, because if you open up with a solo, you're going to have to be very creative on how you're going to move forward, and that's exactly how this song moves. It has an interesting movement. It goes up and down. It has different momentums. It offers different perspectives. The guitars and drums work really well together. A song that has a great tempo, great vocals all around to really combine that song well, that brings that song well, that wraps it really well. Like I said earlier, bringing a little bit more of an organic feel to it, a more emotional drive in terms of how they come across. The second solo is phenomenal. It gives the track a little bit of a break. It pumps the brakes a little bit. It allows you as a listener to catch your breath, because there's a lot of things for you to digest. There's a lot of things coming at you up until that point. So that solo really works well because it pauses the track ever so slightly before going back into the grittiness and rawness that this song has to offer. Last but not least, Zealots, a very direct track. It almost feels a punk inspired style song in terms of how it's constructed, and then in terms of how it's delivered. I love the sound that it has. I love the straightforward design that it gives to the song itself. It's a track that doesn't take you on a journey. There's no ups, there's no downs. It's just pedal to the metal. Great solo, great guitar sound, really thunderous track. Really brutal, driven, in your face, direct. It tells you what he wants to say, and it takes you where he wants to go. So a song that completely dominates itself, that has a lot of power, a lot of intensity, a song that you blink and it's gone because of that furious nature that it carries from beginning all the way to the end. This is it, Criminal with Sacrificio, out September 17th on Metal Blade Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.